Welcome to Center of Light Radio. Keith Anthony Blanchard here, your host, Yanava. It's good to see you on this beautiful evening, wherever you are in the world, morning, noon, night. Time to get excited. I got a wonderful guest today by recommendation of Gavin Lee Davies with John Hunt's Publishing, Mr. William Wildblood. We're going to be speaking about his, I'm assuming it's a new book, or it's going to be coming out soon, by the name of Earth is a School. We've heard that term quite often. Welcome to Center of Light, Center of Divine Unfoldment and Reinforcement. Strap in all my brother and sister astronauts as we launch for inner space. I want to share with you this new thing. Thank you, Robert Harrison, for sending me lots of donations in the form of jewelry, gifts, trinkets. That's a word. I think that applies. These beautiful things that he's put his heart into, he's blessed and prayed over, which I do the same. For your donations to Center of Light, which helps me to keep doing what I do, and I will do it as long as I can, probably forever. Why? Simply because I love it. Let me tell you a little bit more about that without saying a word. Check it out. Welcome back to Center of Light. I'm trying something new. I want to go back to radio. Even though there's an image in front of you, I want to go back to the mystery of just being able to listen. I think we listen a little deeper when we can't see the eyes, what the eyes take in, and become distracted. There is, there is some sort of kerfuffle going on behind me outside of my apartment. At least it was, and it may come in surprisingly again. I guess they're just trying to physically work things out. So, KK and everyone who has been with my platform for a while, your thoughts about, of course, when I do my presentations, I will be video live. But for radio, with my interviews, such as the one tonight with Mr. William Wildblood, I would like to really know your thoughts about this. Do you want to see the people, or is it like a good vinyl album without the video that you can just sit back and take it in? Before I get to my guest tonight, one final offer here is next Tuesday night, I have a guest coming on. He's from Africa, Man. Check this out. Save the Children. His name is Talibu Bensouda. I watched a simple presentation, him and a phone, and he put me on my knees, literally. There is a divine energy. He's just this very simple African man who cares about children. And we're going to be celebrating, but also sponsoring a fundraiser to feed and save children. He's very serious about what he does, but when he sits in front of that phone, something begins to drape him. It's very guru, old African, whatever it is, guru energy. There's a wise soul that lives in this frame of a body. So that's going to be next Tuesday night, and I do suggest that you bring lots of tissue. You're going to need it. He's going to put you on your knees. Well, I'm speaking for myself. Let me tell you about my guest tonight. My guest tonight is Mr. William Wildblood, and we're going to be speaking about his soon-to-be or new book, Earth is a School. And I also want to touch base with him on another book it seems that he has written called Remember the Creator. Also, everyone know that if my mic shuts off, I hear a little pop in my ear, and I know it's going to shut off for like 3 or 4 seconds. I'm still working on this technology as to why it's doing that. Hopefully, it will be resolved soon. Let me tell you about my guest, Mr. William Wildblood. His book, Earth is a School. William Wildblood was born in London. After a period of working as an antique dealer, he left the UK. He ran a guest house in South India. I was in South India, William, in the year 2000 on Satya Sai Baba's ashram. In South India for several years, and then another in France, where he was also an occasional guide at the medieval abbey of Mont Saint-Michel. He returned to England at the end of the 20th century since he has worked for the BBC magazines in various capacities, including 7 years as an antique columnist. Everyone, I have posted my guest tonight, Mr. William Wildblood's link in the forums to go find his book and whatever that may lead you to. I'm going to get an address or an email or an email web address so we can find out a little more. I'm not sure if he has one. Welcome to Center of Light Radio, William.
Hello, Keith. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to our talk tonight.
I don't know why. I'm drawn to this book cover, even though we're going to be speaking about Earth as a School. Remember the Creator. So obviously you've been doing spiritual development long enough to have written a few books about it. So for me and for many people, what has often put us on such a path is pain. Was it that way for you, or was this something innate that just began to blossom at an early age, or how did that go down for you, sir?
Pain. Well, I do agree with you. Often it is pain or suffering or frustration of some kind where you think, is this all there is? This can't be all there is. And I guess that I was born in, 1955, and I grew up in London. And I often felt when I was a small boy that this was not my first life. I can't put it, I can't say I remember past lives, but I thought I didn't begin here. I've been around somewhere before. So this was always at the back of my mind. And then as I grew up in the materialistic secular world that we all know and we all live in. And this was never enough for me. So I went through a period of, kicking against the pricks, as we say. And then when I was 22, I met someone in quite peculiar circumstances, and that started me off on a real spiritual search. And the journey continues, really.
Does it actually ever end?
Well, I hope not, because
I love that idea. Yeah.
That's one of the things I think. I mean, if it ended, that would be a kind of death, wouldn't it? So I know some people think there's an enlightenment and a liberation and you're one with the absolute, but I don't think even that can be the end of things, because I think there's just constant growth and change. And I think it's somewhere in the Bible it says, God says, "Behold, I make all things new." And I think that's a really nice thought, that there's constant newness. You've never reached the end of the journey.
I really love that. In fact, while you and I were sitting in the Let's Wait for a Little While lobby green room, I wrote this into my phone to do a presentation surrounding exactly what you said, sir. Sit in the infinite grace of infinite potential. That's what God is. Presentation. So that's what God is. It's the unfoldment of infinity turning within itself for infinity. I like that it's just this ongoing repository of bliss. And things can only, someone has told me recently, if you believe there's something more, then there's something more. And if you believe there's something more, then there's something more. And if you believe there's something more, there has to be something more.
Yes, but you can have. I agree with you, but you can always go more and more deeply into the heart of God. You've never exhausted all those.
Exactly right. The divine fire, the cave of samadhi, that kind of unity.
Yeah, then that's exactly what I think too. So yeah, pain. I mean, it is pain, isn't it? The pain is thinking that the world is not enough. Is that the name of a James Bond film? I think it might be. But that's what I think so many people who embark on the spiritual path think, that you're faced with the world as you know it, even religion, conventional religion. But it's all a bit dry and empty, isn't it, for many people, without that sort of mystical savor that we look for and we seek and we need. We need it.
I love it. In the new spiritual community, I love the tenacity, the fire. We're here to save ourselves. I still get that. But you can bet your sweet ass, if I'm driving to a supermarket because I want some nourishment, some manna, some sustenance, and the supermarket's about 15 miles away, if someone pulls up next to me in a spiritual Ferrari and says, "Hey, do you need a ride to the store?" I'm going to jump into the car and we're going to zip off. And that spiritual Ferrari, meaning someone of a guru stature. While you were in India, sir, did you have the opportunity? Was it something you were interested in, to delve into some of the Babas or some of the masters? Please tell.
Well, yeah, let me start a bit earlier. Do you mind if I do? Because I'll just say a bit about myself, just so people can have...
Enlighten me, please.
an idea. I mean, you can obviously tell that I'm British from my accent, and
really,
I think I'm fairly typically so, because I've got an English father and a Scottish-Irish mother, so I cover most of the bases there.
Your voice is quite musical.
Sorry?
Your voice is quite musical.
Musical. Oh, thank you very much.
Right? Yeah, please continue, sir.
So, you said some of the things about me, that I was an antique dealer for a little time. I was interested in 18th and 19th century English pottery and porcelain for some reason. I don't know, but it's pretty stuff. The trouble is, when you start dealing with it, it sort of spoils the beauty of it, because you're just coming to buying and selling. So I didn't do that for too long, but I did it for a bit. But anyhow, since my early 20s, my main interest has always been in spirituality and religion. And so, yes, as you say, I lived in South India for several years, 5 years, I think, in Tamil Nadu, in a little hill station called Yerkod, which is where they grow coffee. There are coffee plantations there. And we had a small guest house there, which was a beautiful little place, old couple of old colonial style bungalows. And I did meet several, I suppose you'd call them gurus, when I was there. I met Krishnamurti. Do you remember him? And
I do.
You talked about Sai Baba. I lived in Whitefield for a little while, where he had an ashram. Quite coincidentally, actually, I wasn't there because of him. I wasn't that impressed by him, I've got to tell you. I know a lot of people have a very different opinion of him, but he didn't really appeal to me very much. But I saw him, and I had friends who liked him a lot.
Totally understood. Yeah, it's everybody has their own best friend deity, and it works for some, it doesn't work for others.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, Krishnamurti was much more my cup of tea. Being English, cup of tea.
I love it.
And I stayed at Ramana Maharishi's ashram for a little while, just a few days really, because that was not far from where I lived. So I would just pay visits to some of these places. I knew Swamis from the Ramakrishna ashram. Do you know them?
I've touched on it briefly, and it's been a while. So
yeah, there'd just be, where we lived, there would occasionally be traveling sannyasis who'd come through, and I would talk to them sometimes. Just obscure fellows who were just wandering around India in the sort of way that they've been doing for thousands of years.
So let's move into Earth as a School. Did you, obviously this is an accumulation of everything you've gleaned throughout your life. Is this book out now, or is it to come out soon?
No, it's not out yet. It comes out, I think it's in America, it's the beginning of November. I think in the UK, it's the end of October. So
what branch of John Hunt? Is it O Books, or what is it?
It's Axis Mundi. So this is Earth is a School is the third book I've had published by John Hunt Publishing. The first one was called Meeting the Masters. The second was called Remember the Creator. That's the one you like the cover of, you said.
Well, we can't just glaze right over a title like a book like Meet the Masters. Come on now.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's probably the most interesting thing about me, actually, is as experiences I had in my early 20s on to my, I guess, 40s, something like that, about 20 years. And that was the subject of Meeting the Masters, which is called Meeting the Masters, A Spiritual Apprenticeship. And it's also discussed in the new book, which Earth is a School. And it was my encounter over a period of 20 years with a group of spiritual beings who instructed me in personal spiritual development. So we can talk some more about that if you like.
Sure. Did you grow up in the era, or are you familiar with Mihir Baba?
Yeah, he Iranian, wasn't he? He was.
Yes, I think he was. At least that part of the world, that's for sure.
A Sufi, I think he was, wasn't he? Yes, I do know of him. Yeah. Why?
So yeah, go ahead, sir, please.
Well, I'll say how this all came about. When I was about 22, I'd reached the point when I was very frustrated with the way my life was going. I had a job which didn't interest me at all, and the world seemed not very exciting to me. And I went to a metaphysical bookshop in London, and I was just browsing the shelves looking for something which might appeal to me. And then there was a chap in the shop as well. I think he turned out to be in his late 50s, who began talking to me and asked me what I was interested in. And then I said I didn't know, I was looking for stuff. And then so we began talking, and he introduced me to ideas about reincarnation, which I didn't know much about at the time, because at that time, the only thing I knew about reincarnation was people who pretended to be Julius Caesar or Cleopatra or something. So, it's a pretty crude idea I had about it. So anyhow.
Yeah, most people associate reincarnation with being someone famous, and just
yeah, exactly.
It's that's a novelty.
I was Queen Elizabeth. I was Attila the Hun. Yeah, no, I was a lonely peasant in. But anyway, the long and short of it is that this chap who's called Michael, he and I ended up living together, leading a spiritual life together. And we used to meditate together. We used to meditate for about 45 minutes in the morning and another 45 minutes in the evening. And it was with him that I had the antique shop. And one evening while we were meditating, he went into trance, I suppose you'd say, and he began sounding the Om, the sacred Indian syllable, which is some to say the sort of base note of the universe.
Yeah, and it's sort of the glue that holds everything together.
Yeah, something like that. It's the kind of fundamental tone, isn't it? The sort of the root from which everything grows, perhaps.
That's right. Love it. Fantastic.
So he began doing this, and I'd never known him do it before, and it went on and on and on, and I thought, what's going on here? This doesn't sound like him at all. And eventually it stopped. And when it stopped, there was a silence. And I always say that this was like a living silence. It wasn't the silence where there's nothing. It was a silence which almost seemed to have everything, like as though the Om had created this.
Understood.
Living silence.
Understood. Yeah.
And then a voice spoke through Michael, and that was my introduction to these spiritual beings who would speak to me fairly constantly over the next 3 or 4 years, and then more sporadically over the next 15 years or so. So they spoke to me about 20 years in all.
Is there anything you can share that may be applicable that we can hear and take in? And like, what would be sort of a message that was imparted through your friend?
Well, I mean, I have shared it. I didn't talk about it at all for many years because it's, first of all, it seemed quite private. Secondly, it just seemed almost sort of vulgar in a way. You're talking about things like this, and then the first book, Meeting the Masters, these were the masters. That was about that, and I made notes of their talks for the first year, but then I stopped after the first year. But I still had these notes for the first year of the experience, and I decided to write about that. I think it's about 12 years ago I wrote that first book, and John Hunt published it, Meeting the Masters, in 2012 it was. And the bulk of what they say was to do with my personal spiritual development. I mean, there was nothing earth-shatteringly new in what they said, and I think that's a good thing, because new stuff is really not necessarily what you need to know. You need to know the basics, and we often think. I remember they would always tell me that the most important thing was love, and I used to think to myself, yeah, I know love. Everybody knows that love's the most important thing. I want to hear something more exciting.
Yeah, and it's the new stuff is not really important. Like you said, going back to the basics. So how far did the basics actually go back? It's ancient. It's just ancient.
It is, because the rules don't change really.
In all directions, it's ancient in all directions.
Yeah. But the way they spoke was extraordinary. They had such power and authority in their presence. Now, I've known a little bit about mediums and channeling and so on and so forth, and most of it I regard as not coming from a particularly high plane. I mean, I expect you're familiar with the idea of different planes of consciousness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and there are beings that exist on these different planes. From the people who've just died, who might be hanging around on some relatively low level, to the great saints and sages of the past who are still fully alive. I mean, of course they are, and they do communicate with us. Mostly they're going to communicate through what the masters who spoke to me called impression, which is they will try and put ideas in your head, not in concrete verbal form, but in the form of, impressions, intuitions, illuminations, and then it's up to your mind. First of all, your mind has to receive this, which is where meditation helps, because if in meditation your mind is more open to spiritual impression, but it has it receives it, but it also has to then translate it into a verbal form, because they're not going to put words in your head, because that's just spoon feeding you like a baby, and they're not trying to make babies, they're trying to make mature spiritual masters like they are. Who
are some of these masters? Did they have names? Were names important? Did you? Yeah, please.
No.
I love it.
Sorry. Yes and no. I think names are important, and I think first of all, I think we all have spiritual names. Like my name is William Wildblood, but that's just my earthly persona. I don't know what my spiritual name is, but I think we all do have spiritual names, and I think what a real spiritual name does, it somehow embodies what we are. Our name is like ourself. That's why the name Jesus Christ is so powerful, I think, because that conjures up a vibration, an energy, to use these words, or a being. I mean, there is something very, very powerful in proper names, I think.
You know, William, the name that you see, the letters, the configuration you see under my picture, the Y with a
Yes.
zero in the yoke, and the N with a linear line, and the V with a spine or an erect anchor, if you will. This is something that came to me many years ago. And I really love that you just went right there, not because I want to talk about this, but it's so valid to what you said. Many years ago, when I first started my spiritual disco dance, I went inside and I said, I'm curious. I got a lot of fire in my belly, William. I'm ready to start learning. And I said, my soul has to have a name, an identity, if you will. So I went inside in meditation, 10, 15, whatever minutes. And I hear very clearly, and it wasn't like, Moses, take your sandals from thy feet. It wasn't that kind of voice. It was just this impression that was just so definite. And there was no way out of this, not conundrum, there's just no way out of it. And it said, my mic did that goofy thing, and the voice said, Yanava. And I said, what is Yanava? Yahnavah. And it said, and I just knew that was my soul's name. Many years, fast forward, a couple of years ago, I was interviewing a divine man from India by the name of Swamiji Viswayogi. He is completely illumined. All that being said, I asked him, what does this mean? And I showed to him on a piece of paper, and he looks at me and the audience and the camera and proceeds to say what this soul name is, Yah. And I'm saying this because you said that everyone has a signature vibration, and because of the names. Well, Yah is the sound of the fire of the heart, God, the power, the will, the source, all that juicy, delicious spiritual stuff. As to why the O, or the zero, is in the yoke of the Y. It's the wholeness, it's the unity. It encompasses all. The N, with its linear line, is the mind. The mind is a linear tool. And Va, the V, would be the backbone, which is carrying out action. So we have the fire in the heart, Yah. We have the mind, which is the planner, the organ. We have the Y with the zero, which is the fire. The N, which is the mind, the planner, the organizer. Hopefully the mind is clear. And Va, the spine in the middle of the V, is the backbone to carry out the wishes of the said source. So I totally agree that everyone has a spiritual name, but I was told that this name that I've adopted is actually the name of the knuckle on the hand. What I mean by the knuckle on the hand, we have individual fingers, right? And so we see the separation in between, so we think everyone is separate from us. But the knuckle on the hand is where all those individual expressions unite, and we call that the Christ principle. And the hand would represent the wholeness, which is God itself. So this is sort of not only a name, but it describes the action of pretty much of every sentient being that's trying to aspire to that infinite potential that we talked about.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And when you were describing what those three parts of the name mean, I thought what popped into my mind was that they're like almost like spirit, soul, and body. You said there was the backbone.
That's exactly what it is.
So
most people say body, mind, and spirit, but actually you said it correctly, at least in this formula, it's spirit, mind, and body.
Yeah, that's what it seemed to me to be, exactly what you seem to encapsulate with this name. So it's a great name.
Yeah, and then it has all the ahs. We often look at scripture or any sacred text, and God's name is always Paramahansa Yogananda, Jesus Ananda, Yanava, Krishna, Buddha, all these ahs.
That's true. That again, it's a bit like the Om we were talking about earlier. It's a kind of fundamental base root word from which everything else grows. But the masters who spoke to me, and I call them masters because, first of all, that's what they called themselves. And secondly, they were masters in that they were my teachers and I was the pupil. But they did call themselves the masters, and sometimes they referred to higher masters, which interested me because it made me realize that there is a hierarchy, even in heaven. There are beings, there's a whole level of beings. There are realized souls, we call them, whatever we want to call them. But there are beings above them, and it carries on, rather like we were saying earlier, when you go deeper and deeper into the heart of God. So these masters, they would refer to higher masters. And one of them did actually give me a name, of the higher masters,
Oh
and
my
he
gosh, lay it on me.
was called. Well, it's not. I mean, it's not an extraordinary name. I like it.
But it's powerful. It's yours, and I like
He was
to
called
know that.
So, but most of them didn't give me names, and when I asked them, because I was naturally curious. Who wouldn't be? So I did
Right. Huh?
ask, and they said, at the moment, just think of us as just messengers from God. That's what they said, to think of them. And this name of this book that you mentioned earlier, Remember the Creator, that was something they said to me, and as in fact was Earth is a School, the new book, which comes out in November. That was also something they told me. Earth is a school, they said, and it is, I think.
I'm really enjoying this conversation. I love all the interviews I do, all of them. And some of them are more in that reverberates my heart. I like the dreaming stuff, the lucid stuff. I love the exploring the universe stuff. I love the meeting the masters stuff. I've had so many late night laying my body down on the bed and releasing the spirit with Satya Sai Baba brings me into a little shack watching a master from Tibet being initiated by projecting his consciousness through a pane of glass without breaking it into a clay mold to create a bust where he sit to put behind him as an award that he did it. This stuff has my juices flowing. So I'm really digging the conversation here, sir. Thank you. Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here, Center of Light Radio. Been doing this for a long time, and I love every moment of it. Tonight, my guest is Mr. William Wildblood, and we're speaking about, hopefully, our conversation with here and there, hither and thither. William, would you tell us a little more about this new book that's coming out here shortly in November, I believe you said it was? And do you have a website that you can offer, or is that something you don't do? But please lean into the idea of telling us more about this new book.
I have a blog which is it's called the address is meetingthemasters.blogspot.com. But just Meeting the Masters, this is the name of this blog, because I started it after I wrote the first book, and it took off on its own, really.
Would you please repeat that address again, because I want my listening audience to go stomp all over your work and make a big stink and let you know they exist.
Yes, it's Meeting the Masters, all
right.
one word. Meeting the Masters .blogspot.
Blogspot.
Yeah. .com.
.com. Everyone, I am posting this into the forums. Make sure you go check it out if you're into what he and I are and become a part of the Meeting the Masters tribe. Please continue, sir.
So, whoops, that's my dishwasher. I'm sorry. So the book, I will tell you what the book is about. It's called Earth is a School, and the title comes from something I was told by these masters I've been talking about, the spiritual beings who spoke to me over a period of about 20 years. And it refers to the fact that the material world that we live in is an environment that was set up to develop spiritual consciousness in pre-existing souls, because that's one of the things that I believe, and I suspect you do too, that we don't just start with our birth here. We have consciousness. We are alive elsewhere on spiritual planes before we come here. So I think that human souls start off as like infant souls, baby souls who are without any experience, because you need to come to a dualistic environment such as this world is to gain the experience to make you grow in consciousness. And so souls are beings created by God in his image, in my view, and therefore with individual consciousness, but they exist on a purely spiritual level to begin with, the nature of which is such that their freedom can't be exercised. And we learn through freedom, I think. And there's a chapter in the book about freedom and how it's an essential spiritual quality. But on the spiritual plane, where we are originally from, I think all souls are spiritual beings in human bodies. So on that spiritual plane, there's no choice, because there's no duality. There only is just the complete absorption in God, but it's an unconscious absorption.
So you saying that it takes eons of time to learn how to place human correctly, basically.
I don't know how long it takes.
My point was simply, like you said, when we begin this cycle of appearing and reappearing and disappearing and on and on and on, that there's infinite growth that begins to happen as to why we have reached this level of the game, if we will, 2021. So it took us quite a long time of going up and down, up and down, up and down, so it seems, from this vantage point, to get to this place where we can actually begin to move into the human experience. So human meaning Hugh as above, and man from the earth, and therefore there's an intersection that happens in the heart as the Christ exposed himself, being crucified. He exposed that core to become the embodiments of said prophecy. Yeah
I think it's very important to realize that we have been around for a long period of time. We haven't just started up. I mean, you could say that spirit or consciousness, I suppose it's a very similar thing, evolves right through the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms before it even gets to the human kingdoms. But I think there are different ways that spirit evolves. I think God he's a clever fellow. And he doesn't just do everything in the same way. He doesn't do everything in the same way, because I think the whole point of creation in God's eyes is to interest him. I mean, and that's why he gives freedom to the beings that are created, because if we didn't have freedom, it'd be like a boy who built a model railway track, and it's great fun when he builds it, but then the train just goes round and round on the tracks, and it's really boring. I want the train to do something. So he gives us freedom in a way that even God can be surprised by us. Of course, he's not really surprised, because he lives on a level above time and he can see what's going on. But he's given something which is more than him, and that's what human beings are. I think that's what this freedom we have is, this individuality we have. I think that's a very precious and important gift.
You paint very wonderful word pictures, sir. I like the image that you painted, that he gives us free will. Basically, he says, surprise me.
Well, I think you're right. I think he does. I mean, wouldn't you, if you were God, wouldn't you like to be surprised? But that can lead to trouble. That's where the whole evil thing comes in, I suppose.
Yeah, surprise me. Both sides of the fence. When I write books or write music albums or whatever it is I do, and I hire a graphic artist and I say, okay, what do you want? Well, here's the name of the book. I could tell you what I think I want, but I hired you because I can't do graphics or because I can't do art. I'm hiring you for your connection to the creator. And when I say homecoming, crossing the bridge to the soul, what does that feel like to you? And then after we get the initial cover, the prototype, and then we can start shaking hands and refining. But I want you to be the wellspring. So yeah, surprise me.
Well, I think that's it, because if you think that very profound statement in the Bible that we are created in his image, now what does that mean? That means that what we are, conscious, creative, loving, intelligent beings, that is what divinity is as well. So we have that same capacity for creativity, obviously on a totally different level, but we have it. I mean, we're not nothing. We are something, and we are created to be something. And I think this is what this whole lesson in the world is about, to develop these capacities of creativity, of love, and real love, because unfortunately love is one of these words that's kind of misused these days, isn't it? That it's something so profound, and we think that we know it, but we don't begin to know it.
You know, William, in the last 18 months, I decided to create, or at least put my own spin on this term, locked down.
Yeah.
Instead of locked down, I decided to say I'm locked in. I am locked in. This whole 18 months of whatever it is, has been such a beautiful blessing for me. I've saw beyond the facade, thank God. Even or odd, I found myself right in the middle. And it gives me still this. I can sit here and talk to you. I do this almost every night, be it with guests or just doing a presentation. And I could have right now it's going into fall here in the States, at least at the region I live in. And the weather's nice. And I get that. And I want to be outside, but my computer, my work, my task, my play calls to me. And, I give myself the grace of, going out and stepping out for a bit, but I just love what I do. And I'm fortunate for this time that we're living in, though it can be a little wonky for a lot of people. But I agree, this is what this is really all about. It's forcing our hand. The earth got cleaner. Strangely, the separation of people brought us together.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've called this lockdown house arrest, but
I hear you.
But I mean, I've got to say, for the first 2 or 3 months of it here in England, it was quite nice when there were not many cars about, and it was really quite peaceful. But anyhow, I don't suppose we're here to talk about that. The thing is, the book, The Earth is a School, the book that John Hunt are publishing, which we're here to talk about. So it's really, what it does is, the back copy, it says best really, it presents the case for the material world as a spiritual school, which is specifically tailored to develop consciousness and bring the human soul closer to a recognition of its divine source. Because I tend to think that we start off as unconscious oneness, like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. They were living in a kind of bliss, but they didn't really know they were in bliss. They were just attached to oneness with nature in a way. That was the garden. But then they have to have this separation from the source, and it's through this separation that we can grow. It's through the duality in the physical world where we are cut off from God. Sort of
being kicked out of the nest.
Yeah, exactly.
It's exactly what it is.
That is exactly what it is. If we're not kicked out of the nest, that's a great analogy. If we're not kicked out of the nest, then how are we ever going to learn to fly? So I think that's part of the lesson. This being in this world where there's pain, as you were talking about at the beginning of this talk, and suffering and all sorts of bad things, but it's through dealing with that. And I don't mean this in a glib way, because bad things are bad, and that's one can't sort of say they're all good really, but they are bad. But even so, through experiencing suffering and pain, one grows in consciousness, and eventually one aspires to become one with God again. Only this time, you return to Him what He gave you. He gave you yourself. That when we were created as souls in the beginning, whenever that was, at the dawn of time, or we were created as living souls, and a living soul is an individual being. That's what it is. So we take that individuality away, and we develop it. We grow it, we polish it. It gets knocked around a bit, but that also is like carving a statue, and eventually we return that to God. And that's the point that I think we're at now. Humanity has developed most extraordinary civilizations and cultures and technologies, etc., etc., etc. But it's completely alienated from God now. Do you not think?
Yeah. While I'm thinking about it, I had mentioned, You talked about, I said it was being kicked out of the nest, and you said, well, if we don't get kicked out of the nest, how are we going to fly? And what recently came across my experience from many years before, any of you, if you have not read this little small book, about 70 pages, called Jonathan Livingston Seagull, talk about learning the process of flying to the higher altitudes, if you will. I suggest the read in a hammock. Whatever it is you do in your hammock, just read a good, small, simple book. It'll take you 45 minutes. Or you can get on YouTube and look up Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach. It's a 45-minute listen. It is amazing.
I haven't read it. I remember it. But
wow.
It was quite a big bestseller, maybe 30 years ago.
Yeah, yes.
I do remember it, but I never got around to reading it.
And he's trying to fly faster and faster and faster, trying to invent techniques that will allow him to do that. And the rest of the seagull flock is scoffing and ridiculing, and he's tucking his wings into his body to try to lessen his resistance. And he fails and he fails and he fails until the end of the book. I'm not going to give it away. Keith, be quiet. It's a great read. I strongly suggest it. Probably the effect I think it will happen on anyone who is aversion to this book, it will sort of be like a new Bible, if you will, to you. It will hit you that hard because the land of all possibilities becomes in your grasp.
Well, you've given it a good sell there. I've got no choice now. I'll have to read it.
I'm sponsored. Please continue, sir. About you. Go ahead.
You're not Richard Bach by any chance, are you really?
Not in this life, but since we talked about reincarnation earlier, I'm sure somewhere along the recent past I was.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting about reincarnation because when I first went to India, we arrived at New Delhi, and it was New Delhi airport. It was about 2 or 3 in the morning, so it was dark, and the airport was like all international airports, the same. But when we got a taxi and went out of the airport, and I rolled down the window. In those days, you rolled the windows down. They didn't, and the smell of India, and I don't mean the bad smell. This was the plants, the flowers, the fragrances of the night. It hit me, and I just laughed because I knew it. It's somehow the scent of flowers brought the memory of being there before back more than anything else, more than sights or sounds. And that was an interesting experience because it was an utter conviction that, you've been here before. Of course you have.
Everyone, I did post into both forums the audiobook. Do what you got to do to wind down, a glass of wine, maybe some earth smoke, and just none of that. A candle, soft music, no lyrics, and listen to this audiobook. You will soar. Sir, I am really having a fantastic time with you. We have been speaking with my guest tonight, Mr. William Wildblood, about his book, Earth School, as well as the masters and remembering the creator and all kinds of mystical stuff. Yeah, William, I'm a mystic kind of guy. I'm not an aspiring mystic. I am a mystic. I'm waking up. I'm moving into my mysticism with the intention of going into a cave, and not because I'm running away from the world, which the world is noisy. I'm not running away from the noisy world. I'm running into absolute reality, into the quiet where everything possible just sits there as a furnace and burns forever. That's what I choose for myself, sir. And you sound like a tribe sibling. I would assume that you're doing the same, and as often as possible, however you can.
Yes, I think exactly, because that's what this life is for. I mean, it's to me, being in this world is to develop a closer relationship with God or spiritual truth, both within ourselves and beyond ourselves. There's this double strand, isn't there, of immanence and transcendence, and we're meant to pursue them both, I think. So I just will talk a tiny bit more about the book, because you mentioned the Meeting the Masters book just then. In the back of this Earth is a School book, there is an appendix which also goes into my encounter with these spiritual beings at a greater length than we've been able to do here. And that's an important part of the book for me, because I think this is something that I can offer from my own experience, which might interest people, because I think we really should know that there are spiritual beings who are trying to guide us into greater awareness of living truth. And they do inspire us. They're not going to speak to us as they spoke to me, and they don't speak to me as they did anymore. But I do feel that they are still there. And as I said earlier on, impressing my mind with thoughts and teachings and guidance and
possibilities.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
and if
right.
they're doing that to me, then they're doing it to everyone, because they're doing it to anyone who opens up to them.
So, William, if that's true, and I'm not denying it isn't, but I'm asking you, if I'm playing the audience member, if that is true, if they're supplying the same wellspring of divine grace and love to you and to everyone, how would you suggest support that those who are not experiencing such things can be receptive to such grace?
Okay. First of all, aspiration. But wanting it is a good thing, because wanting it is like the flower opening its petals to the sun. I mean, think of it as the sun. Now, if the flower bud is all bunched up and not opened, and that's like a normal human being who is not opening him or herself up to spiritual radiation. So if the bud is all bunched up, closed up, then it's not going to receive the light, is it? But when it aspires, sort of opens up its heart principally, but also the mind, opens these things up to the light, then it will receive as much of the light as it can. And also, they might even be speaking to people who are listening through our conversation, just because we're talking about this. That's going to, do you not think? I mean, it's like strike a little spark, which opens something up. And that's why I've written these books, believe it or not. It's because I don't think they came to me in the sort of obvious way that they did just for my own benefit. And basically they told me it wasn't for my own benefit. It's so that I can talk to other people, and then they will aspire upwards. They can just read the book, or they don't even have to do that. I mean, obviously I'd like it if they do, but they can just realize that there are these beings on spiritual planes who are constantly raining down truth. But the thing is, you have to lift yourself up to receive it. They're not going to, for the most part, they're not going to come down here and speak to you where you are now. You have to lift up your whole being through meditation, through prayer, and through aspiration.
It's a shake hands deal.
Yeah, it is. I mean, but that's how you grow. You see, you're not if they all came down here and you met them in the market and they came on TV, you wouldn't really grow. You would just think, oh, that's cool, but you wouldn't be brought up to become like them, and that's what they want. They want you to become like them, and so therefore they're trying to pull you up your spiritual self to a higher level.
I love that you used the word, and it took me by surprise, and then I had to fall into it, and I get all of its implications. Spiritual radiation. Most people associate radiation with, I'm going to be burnt alive. Well, that's sort of true, actually, in the spiritual garb. You go stand around a holy man, a God man, a fully divinely lit man, he will radiate this spiritual light, and if you're not able to receive it, it can burn you. You won't be able to handle it, and that's why they're so kid-gloved and careful. Only those who have been called can step near the masters. Masters doesn't only mean men. It can be master thought forms, master light forms, master this, master that. Because, if you become the samadhi fire, you will never get burned. But until you reach the level of intensity of said fire, you will get burned. Until then, you just have to work on becoming that spiritual radiation. There you go.
Yeah, but it's like the sun, isn't it? The sun gives life. There'd be no life without the sun. There's no life, no light. But then you can go out in the hot sun too much and you will get burned. Yeah, it's a two-edged sword. But you have to, if you develop spiritually, then you're going to be able to absorb more light.
And the sun is also applicable to SON. You go out in the sun, you get exposed to the light.
Yeah, I mean, I've often thought that pun is just, it's too good, isn't it? It's got to be real.
Yeah, and you have SUN, the sun gives warmth and light to the world. The SON gives warmth and light to the world. But when you look at the word soul, SOL, which is another name for sun, light, warmth to the world, and then we look at the word soul, SOUL, there's an amazing thread that runs through everything.
I know, it's like someone's screaming at us, wake up, can't you see? It's so obvious.
Sir, I had a blast. I wish this could last forever, but I would like to interview you again sometime soon. Please always keep me posted on your new ventures, and I will get behind them. My audience will get behind you, and we will push so that you become not only successful but abundant in every possible way. Is there anything you would like to leave us with in closing about your book/books, or something that we can put on a spoon and swallow and process, assimilate, digest, and use in our own life?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for having me on your show. I've enjoyed talking to you a lot. And
blessings. Thank you.
I really like your enthusiasm and your sense of joy. I think they're great, and very valuable things. So, secondly, well, I should just say that the book Earth is a School comes out at the beginning of November, so another month or so. It's my third book. And I hope to write some more, but at the moment this is the one that I'm interested in, and I think it's a very important thing, a concept that we need to know, that Earth is a school. That however tough things seem down here, and I think they are pretty tough for many people at the moment, there's a point to it. It's to enable us to grow, to learn lessons, and of course we get tests like in any normal school. You get tests, and you can fail your exams, but you get another chance to take them, I think.
William, listening to you, I know that you and I and many people have read a lot of stuff, lots of books, because we were hungry. But I also hear the things that are not being spoken. I hear the empty space, and I hear someone who's connected. I hear the wisdom that is inherent, that those books that we have read have opened up those gates. It's really, really cool, sir, to have talking with you. I've lived a lot of life with higher experiences, hanging out with certain masters. But the question something you had said a second ago that I want to ask a question before we sign off is, Earth is a school. Do you intuit that the dream realm, the place we occupy once we close our eyes and lay down for a little while, do you think it's a parallel so that we can continue to practice our development? In other words, it's a blank slate and we bring to it what we want, and it projects to us whatever that it does, so we can actually begin to work some of these things out on another level?
Are you talking about when we sleep?
When we sleep, when we dream. Do you think it's a parallel world we can go to practice further?
Well, I definitely do. And funnily enough, before we began talking, I was looking at something that the master had said to me. And if you can just bear with me a moment, I will find it. Yes, here we go.
Please.
The masters, this is from my first book. I think I also mentioned in Earth as a School in the appendix where I talk about the masters. They said that at night we should attune ourselves to the higher planes by meditation or prayer, so that when we left our bodies, when we go to sleep, we could get there more quickly and easily. And so it's important, I think, to pray or meditate before going to bed, because then that attunes our whole mind and even the body to the higher worlds, and we will go there and learn there and continue there and serve there. I think we don't just learn, we serve as well. We
I love that. I'm all about some service. And I totally agree with you, sir. When we lay down at night, I go into bed and I recite my own. Yours could be thinking of your child. You can say your child's name. It's all about the power that is inherent in what you find is beautiful. And it sets the tone for the next experience. In other words, I have often said, William, because I'm a professional musician, when I walk into a room, I'm not doing it to showboat. Well, I can't lie. I am. But when I walk into a room, I don't say anything to anybody. When I cross the threshold, I literally say, yo, I am here. I just walked into the room. And I don't mean this cockily, but I mean this from an absolute space of confidence that my energy, my presence is going to be the dominant tone. Now, even though certain things may go down that is not part of my dominant tone, I've done my part to say, I'm going to send out this radar that my dominant tone is all encompassing me and you in a space that we come together and join in a space of absolute unity and joy. And when I meet people, I actually, when I touch their hand or shake them or hug them, William, you've probably seen this, I have no doubt in your own life. When I meet people for the first time, I look at them, in them, and I find one quality that is organic, genuine, beautiful, powerful, all those wonderful word qualities, right? And I begin to massage within myself that quality that I'm just so enamored with in that person. And because I am so hunkered down and focused into that jewel, it could be the sound of their voice, a dialect from England, or wherever, a pendant their grandmother gave them, a beautiful face, a nice smile. And I truly see God step out of that person right in front of my face.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. Amazing, because you just reminded me of another thing that the masters told me, that they said there is God in everybody. I mean, this is not something new. We know that. But sometimes it's a little hard to realize that everybody is a potential God. Everybody you meet. I mean, they aren't yet a God, but they've got the seed of being a God within them. Every single person has got and a unique God, not one like another one. They're their own unique.
Oh my God, we are so on the same page. I've been recently saying the same thing. You don't want to worship the God that everybody else does, nor do they want to worship yours. It's just you. It's that which is sacred to you. William, thank you so much for joining me. Would you hang out for about a minute so I can sign off? I'd love to talk to you in the radio green room and just do that behind the stage thing. Is that doable for you, sir? 1 minute?
Yes, of course. Yes. Well, once again, Keith, thank you very much for having me on your show, and I'd like to thank Gavin Davis for set this up.
What a beautiful mess he is. I love him.
And John Hunt Publishing.
Yes, thank you. Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here tonight. My guest, Mr. William Wildblood. His last surname should tell you a lot. Wildblood. It's in his blood, this spiritual, radiant wildness. We must return spirituality back to its natural wild state. Keith Anthony Blanchard here. Just a quick reminder, next Tuesday night, this beautiful, simple, oh my dear Lord, I'm warning you now, bring some tissue. It will become an issue. I found this very simple, powerful man from Africa spreading the message, save the children, and he's doing everything he can to feed children. He's real. I understand many people in many regions of the world are shamming and scamming and slamming and damning all that is good through such hoaxes and scams. This is not the case. He's going to put you on your knees. He has a shamanistic quality, a guru quality about him. I was truly humbled by his beautiful presence and beautiful compassion for others. My name is Keith Anthony Blanchard. I do appreciate all of you. Remember, nothing has ever been, is now, nor can ever to infinity be created more beautiful than you. When you truly understand that, integrate that, and implement that, you will explode into infinite spasms, gasms of ecstasy. At least that's where I'm headed. Peace, love, and light. Your love beyond measure.